Welcome. I'm Josipa, President and CEO of the Canadian Urban Transit Research and Innovation Consortium. And it's my pleasure to introduce you to my colleague, Parvathy Pillai, who's Program Manager and Project Manager for Zero Emissions Bus Technologies at CUTRIC. Today, we're excited to launch Rout 2.0. This is the next generation of the tool that many of you, and especially our transit agencies, have come to love and trust over the last few years as we've gone out trying to figure out how will zero emissions buses work in our communities, what will they cost us, how much will they help us save the environment, and how much can they help us clean the air. As many of you know, our Rout tool has helped you solve those challenges in the past, but Rout 2.0 brings a whole new set of variables and considerations to the discussion. Today, as part of that launch, we're going to be talking about how electric buses work, what they cost, how much power you'll need, how you're going to electrify and decarbonize, and how you'll get the fuel that you need for your buses if they're hydrogen or natural gas powered to the facilities where that fuel needs to get to for you to decarbonize your entire community. If you're a transit agency or a utility, you're going to want to stick around to hear about how many buses do we need? How will the chargers work? How will we cluster those chargers? How will we get the hydrogen fuel to our facilities? Those are the questions that Rout 2.0 helps you to answer. If you're a consulting firm, you're going to want to stick with us today to hear about how we can partner with you as more and more cities declare climate action emergencies and seek to work with nonprofit organizations like CUTRIC to solve those difficult mathematical, economic, and physics questions that they need to solve in order to figure out how to decarbonize their transit fleets. And if you're a government representative, then you're going to want to stay with us today during this exciting Rout 2.0 launch to figure out what is this tool that's going to help the federal government get to 5,000 zero emissions buses by mid-decade. And what is this tool that's going to help our cities achieve their climate action targets for decarbonifying their entire transit fleet by 2040 and 2050. So stay tuned for testimonials from many of our partners that have used our Rout tool in the past and who are excited about the launch of Rout 2.0 in Canada and across North America. You're in the right place if the questions you have are how will electrification work? How will we decarbonize? What will it cost us? How much will we save? And how can this all help to save our planet?
My name is Martin Lapointe. I'm Chief of Electrification and Embedded System Project at the RTC, which is Réseau de Transport de la Capitale in Quebec City. We first approached the CUTRIC for an electrification simulation project pertaining to 5 of our what we call Metrobus routes, which are the top 5 routes in terms of ridership for the RTC. And this was part of the first phase of our electrification in-house program. And at that time, we were looking for a credible supplier to help us. Oui, à l'origine, on a approché CUTRIC pour faire des simulations sur 5 routes qu'on appelle les routes Métrobus, où il y a la majorité de l'achalandage du RTC. On cherchait un fournisseur crédible avec une bonne connaissance des systèmes d'électrification et des véhicules pour être capable de nous aider, nous épauler au niveau des simulations sur ces routes. Our goal was to use the service of CUTRIC and the Rout tool to establish the electrification strategies by simulating various technological options in terms of the type of vehicles, the recharge mode, the power consumption, and also obtain an evaluation of the CapEx and OpEx projection, as well as GHG impact and reduction. À l'origine, on a approché les gens de CUTRIC et en perspective d'utiliser leur outil Rout afin d'établir de notre côté les premières bases des stratégies d'électrification basées sur des simulations qu'on voulait accomplir au niveau des types de véhicules, des types de recharge, de la stratégie de recharge, de l'utilisation de la puissance et de la consommation de puissance, tout comme on voulait avoir des estimations au niveau des frais d'exploitation et des frais d'acquisition de matériel afin d'avoir l'impact global de l'électrification, incluant les aspects environnementaux. In fact, we've used the results from CUTRIC to compare and validate another supplier simulation results, which allow us to confirm our electrification strategies for the specific Metrobus routes. The results of the CUTRIC studies help us to confirm the scenarios such as the depot charging and also the requirement for a new block-based planning within our fleet. En fait, les résultats de CUTRIC et de l'étude de simulation qu'on a réalisée nous ont permis de confirmer des stratégies d'électrification, mais aussi des scénarios en ce qui a trait au type de recharge, par exemple la recharge au dépôt principalement. Également, ça nous a permis de bien cerner nos besoins au niveau des outils de planification pour être capable d'intégrer l'électrification de notre flotte. As I already mentioned, CUTRIC not only simulate on our side the electric buses performance on our Metrobus routes, but also perform a complete analysis of the electrification plan in terms of the CapEx and OpEx, as well as the environmental aspect, allowing us to present the big picture of our ZEB deployment plan, including the risk management.
I'm Sue Connor. I'm the Director of Transit for the City of Burlington, Ontario. I have been involved with CUTRIC since it started up, so I'm well versed in the capabilities, and I know that I have been approached by other parties to do modeling work, but in most cases those are for-profit companies that, in my opinion, wouldn't be supplying the neutral scientific facts that CUTRIC can bring as a nonprofit. It's been good because it's actually shown us that we would actually need to have on-street chargers. We could not just do the electrification of our fleet with in depot charging, which obviously is a cost element, but the modeling has helped us also to know which of our routes would have the biggest impact with electrification. So it kind of puts a roadmap in place for us of where we would start, because we're not planning on electrifying the whole fleet at the start. We would, do this over a number of years. So the modeling work has really shown us, what of our current routes would have the best results and where we should probably start with electrification. Well, I started to look at electrification in my former role with the city of Brampton. And at that time, we had some funding from a developer, and we thought, what a great idea. We'll buy a couple of electric buses. And that was around the time that CUTRIC was starting up. And what, we clearly started to see was it wasn't as simple as that. We really needed to do a lot of research, a lot of work. There were so many factors that had to be considered, in terms of the type of topography in your city, the length of your routes, the passenger capacity of your vehicles, all kinds of things you just didn't think of. You look at people that buy an electric car and they just plug it in and go, but electrifying a transit fleet is very different. So I would say do your research up front, understand where you're going to make your investment and what the best route to go, and it also gives you the data you need, I think, to inform your council on where to go with electrification. I would say that it was great. I felt that sometimes just overwhelmed by the amount of data and the information, but CUTRIC staff was very good to walk us through and explain the information that they provided, the modeling results. So in the end, it was very helpful, and I learned a lot. I'm looking forward to working with CUTRIC to look at hydrogen as an option for our fleet, and I'm sure that will be just as informative, and I will learn a lot from that exercise as well.
Rout specifically is a mathematical physics and engineering tool that we've developed in-house. It lets us predict very precisely and in a very trustworthy manner a set of analytical outcomes that help you understand how electric buses will operate on your roads in your communities, how hydrogen fuel cell buses will operate in your roads in your communities, and now how compressed natural gas buses using zero emissions renewable gas supplies will operate on your roads and in your community. So Rout is a whole set of analytical tools that support the electrification and decarbonization of the transit fleets in Canada and the United States.
So Rout is scientifically accurate. What we mean by that is it has been validated against operational data emanating from data loggers on battery electric buses, hydrogen fuel cell electric buses, and natural gas buses. And this data has been provided to us by our transit agencies across North America. So it adds to the scientific prowess that the tool has.
Many of our transit agencies and government partners ask us, okay, now technically speaking, from a mathematics or physics standpoint, what does Rout actually do algorithmically? Well, specifically, Rout predicts how electrified and decarbonized transit vehicles will work in your community, what they will cost you, what they will save you. It will tell you what your electricity bill will look like, what your hydrogen fuel bill will look like, what your renewable natural gas bill will look like. It predicts how those electric buses and fuel cell buses and zero emissions transit vehicles overall will function on your roads from an energy perspective. So it will help you determine if the buses will run out of power or fuel in the middle of their service. Something that's very important for transit agencies to understand, largely because you need to know exactly how many buses to buy, how much power or energy to get to those vehicles, and how you're going to manage those vehicles out on the road if they cannot replace your diesel or hybrid buses on a one-to-one basis. So overall, Rout lets you test electrification or decarbonization in your vehicle fleet before you actually procure those vehicle and infrastructure systems. Rout allows you to predict precisely what the cost of procurement will be based on your energy, service, and operational goals. Rout also tells our transit agencies whether their current schedules for pull-in and pull-out of their buses, as well as their driver labor allocation schedules, can fit the needs of the technology. Electric buses require charging time, often at the depot or en route. Fuel cell buses require fueling time, usually at the depot, but sometimes in the middle of a service day. And renewable natural gas buses have a lot of discussion ahead in terms of what their fueling profile will look like. Rout 2.0 allows us to predict very precisely what the fueling or charging needs are and whether the time exists in your schedules to be able to achieve that energy transfer. Rout also tells us exactly how many greenhouse gases you're going to be able to eliminate locally and globally from the emissions from well to wheel of your zero emissions buses. And that helps you predict very precisely how much smog and pollutants locally your transit agency will be able to eliminate from the air.
We have worked with multiple set of transit agencies in North America, and a couple of examples that I can point out are Burlington Transit and London Transit Commission in Ontario. So recently, we did the modeling studies to understand that a 1:1 replacement of the diesel buses may not be feasible, and they may need to go into a system-wide overhaul of the system to actually integrate low-carbon smart mobility solutions into their fleet. That's an important consideration for a transit agency because many agencies may come with the belief that one solution of battery electric buses charging in depot may resolve their needs. But after the fleet electrification study, they would realize that a complementary solution involving multiple zero emission solutions may be necessary and a system-wide overhaul may be necessitated.
So as Parvathy noted, pretty much every time we've used Rout to do a system analysis, it is almost always the case that a transit agency will not be able to replace its diesel buses on a one-to-one basis. And more importantly, it is always the case that transit agencies are surprised by how much power they need to get to their facilities and how much hydrogen they need to get to their facilities in order to electrify. It's a really complex future ahead, and Rout 2.0 helps to simplify the situation. So transit agencies have asked us, okay, this is all good, the physics, the engineering, the mathematics, but how much money will we actually save in going electric or decarbonizing with hydrogen fuel cell or renewable natural gas? Rout 2.0 specifically identifies how many millions of dollars and how many tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars a transit agency will save by replacing a diesel vehicle or a hybrid vehicle with a battery electric, hydrogen fuel cell, or renewable natural gas bus on specific routes, on blocks, on entire block runs and vehicle allocations, and across the entire fleet. So Rout 2.0 helps transit agencies identify exactly how much money they'll save, where they'll save it, and how that will be balanced against the very high upfront capital costs that they need to invest in order to go down the zero emissions pathway. Most importantly, though, all of this physics, engineering, mathematics, and economics that Rout 2.0 delivers to our transit agencies is done under the umbrella of a nonprofit consortium. CUTRIC has been around now for over half a decade. Our consortium of partners have been extremely active as members, as directors, as part of a high-performing organization that's fully transparent about what we do and how we do it. So our transit agencies have the confidence that Rout 2.0 has been developed within a nonprofit environment, vetted within a nonprofit environment, and is being delivered to you in a nonprofit environment. And that means you're guaranteed the highest quality product for zero emissions bus modeling and feasibility studies at the lowest possible price across North America. Now, questions abound about why is Rout a good tool compared to possibly all of those other tools out there that may be coming at you, in particular from the private sector or from other agencies where you're not quite sure what the quality is. Well, again, Rout critically has the trustworthiness and confidence of our transit agency members. CUTRIC has developed a membership base of dozens of transit agencies across Canada and in California. They are large transit agencies like TTC, to mid-sized transit agencies like Brampton, to very small transit agencies like Woodstock Transit. All of those transit agencies have very specific needs around zero emissions, electrification, and decarbonization. And Rout has become the most trusted tool by those dozens of transit agencies in California and across Canada, allowing those agencies from the TTC to Brampton, to London, to Edmonton, and many others to benefit from this highly precise calculational tool.
In addition to what Josipa pointed out about the trustworthiness of the tool, I would like to highlight the fact that this is a highly credible tool. The credibility score that the Rout toolset has that we are bringing forth today has two dimensions to it. One, it has the input of real data from utilities, manufacturers, transit operators to actually do the simulation for the agency. Second thing is it is validated using the real-life operational data emanating from the data logos on the zero-emission buses that are operational today on Canadian roads or on US roads. So the two-dimensional credibility score is adding value to the Rout toolset that we are getting to you today in Rout 2.0.
How has Rout 2.0, in your view, transformed the transit industry?
Mm-hmm. In the first generation, I would say Rout has been revelational for the transit agencies, because many of our agencies came to the table thinking that one size fits all and they might be able to work with one solution, such as depot charging for the BEV salon or battery electric buses, But they have left the study understanding that they would need to look at a system-wide overhaul considering different complementary solutions. I would say Rout is a tool set that is revolutionizing. It's changing the way the transit operators are thinking about electrification and decarbonization across North America. And electrification and decarbonization is actually a very complex process, but Rout, we are here to make it simple for you.
Yeah, and I think that comes across, especially when we show up to city councils or regional councils and we present the results of Rout. And the results of our studies, we always like to present to mayors and city councilors, and sometimes it's required by virtue of the transit agency's obligation to the municipality or the region. And as one example, you and I both know, we had a great partner in Riverside Transit. It's a great member of CUTRIC. They had really complicated needs, and we were able to model out precisely that transit agency. And over the course of nearly half a dozen meetings and following up with their council members and their board members, we were able to come to a resolution and answer a number of the questions that those councillors and elected officials had. They had questions about electrification that went well beyond just the modeling. And that's part of the value that you noted, Parvathy, that we bring to the table, which is Rout 2.0 comes with the entire research team at CUTRIC. And when we show up to city councils or regional councils, we're able to ask their deep dive questions about supply chain constraints and manufacturing constraints and life cycle analyses and all the other things that are cropping up in people's minds, especially the minds of elected officials, when they're thinking about how to electrify or decarbonize their community. In the case of Riverside, based on a lot of our modeling outcomes, that agency decided to go pretty much fully to hydrogen fuel cell technology. And that was something that came out of the laws of physics that demonstrated how battery electric buses would operate and what the infrastructural needs would be like in that community, leading to a decision to go to hydrogen fuel cell technology. That kind of decision-making is something that we are seeing regularly occur, that the physics, the mathematics, the economics of Rout and Rout 2.0 are helping transit agencies get into the deep dive discussion of how they'll transform their fleet. And it's helping them show up to their council meetings and their board meetings with the right kind of scientific and technical knowledge to safely and securely guide their elected officials towards climate action. So the question now is, what's new about Rout 2.0? If we've been so successful with Rout, what is new in our Rout 2.0? And that's what we're here to announce and launch. And I'm super excited to tell you about Rout 2.0's additional set of analytical tools. So in addition to all of the trustworthy, credible, reputational tools that we've developed in the past, Rout 2.0 builds on the tool that you've come to love and know by now assessing social equity measures. We know that in the era of #MeToo, in the era of Black Lives Matter, in the era of social transformation that is happening both on the gender front and the racialization front, that it is really critical for transit agencies to think about social equity. Social equity measures like where should the cleanest, greenest, quietest buses be allocated on the basis that some communities are more vulnerable than others and perhaps should be first in line to receive the newest and best technology to serve their mobility needs. Rout 2.0 includes a whole set of socioeconomic social equity measures, which help tell you about the economic zones in your city that would benefit most from the elimination of pollution and noise pollution and smog pollution. Rout 2.0 also recognizes that we're living in the era of a pandemic, and COVID-19 is probably not the last worldwide pandemic caused by zoonotic illness that we will face. And so there are quite clear questions for transit agencies today who are dealing with ridership drop-offs, wanting to know with the ridership drop-off, the fare drop-off, as well as the weight drop-off our bus. Fewer riders means less weight, means the bus performs differently when electrified. How will the pandemic or pandemic-like scenarios in the future, which cause a drop-off in ridership, affect our electrification plan, both from an energy consumption standpoint and an economic cost return on investment standpoint. So Rout 2.0 captures pandemic considerations and ridership considerations resulting from pandemic scenarios where people are not getting back on the bus at the same level that they would have been pre-pandemic.
As Josipa noted, Rout has been around for more than half a decade, and we are here to stay. Rout 2.0 is going to be revolutionizing the way transit fleet operators are going to think about electrification and decarbonification. We would be going beyond just the math of how many buses you would need and how many charges you would need, what kind of electricity utilization you would get, and what kind of electricity bill you would end up paying. We would tell you all that information, but we would also get you the social equity piece that Josipa pointed out earlier, the noise reduction, noise pollution reduction benefits that would emanate from the switch to a zero emission landscape. And more importantly, it would actually get you a start to finish tool. From the initial strategic vision setting that you may need help with at your transit agency in deciding where to go, which direction to go, what pace to go, to the end result wherein you plan out a strategic rollout planning, we would be there with you to ensure you get it done well and right the first time. The Rout 2.0 would help your agency and your municipality and your state or province to achieve the zero emission goals that it has, and local or global climate change action goals and emission reduction targets. It would also enable the country, Canada, to achieve the 5,000 electric bus goal, and United States achieve its localized and global climate change action plans.
So one of the questions our partners sometimes ask us is, well, what can CUTRIC guarantee in terms of how it will help our transit agencies? Parvathy, you've been on the front line of a lot of these complex studies. Over to you for how we can guarantee services to our transit agencies.
For sure, I have been around this work for long, and I have had the privilege of working with multiple transit agencies across North America on this front. And we can assure you the 100% satisfaction in this process. What I mean by that is we work with you from start to finish. As we noted earlier, it's not just a consultant that comes in midway and leaves after the end of the study with the results. We would be there to ensure you assimilate and integrate the outcomes that we present to you. And we would make sure that you are able to translate those results that we present to you in the format that you need for your realistic operation needs. We would stick with you till the end, and that would enable you to translate the message, and that means that we would be there to present the results to the councils and other city or regional councils, for example, and to ensure your rollout plans are designed appropriately. We would support you throughout the entire process, and we have done that step by step all the way to ensure you are succeeding. That's our goal, to ensure you are getting it right and well the very first time, and setting an example for the entire country.
And it's important to note also that Rout 2.0 clearly deals with zero emissions transit technology, but that includes autonomous low-speed electric shuttles. So many of you are aware that first kilometer, last kilometer gaps are serious problems, especially for North American transit, where you're trying to get from a rail hub or a subway hub or a bus terminal to your final point or destination, or you're trying to get to a commercial park or a university campus, and that last couple kilometers or miles is not served by a regular service bus. Or if it is, that bus might come around once every 30 minutes or once every hour, especially during non-peak periods. That's not sustainable if we're trying to get more and more North Americans into transit to address climate, to kill congestion, and to make our cities more livable. So the solution that we've been pursuing over a number of years is, of course, autonomous low-speed shared shuttles. These small shuttles are, in fact, small electrified buses without drivers on board. Rout 2.0 is now able to fully model all of the small shuttles that are available out there in the marketplace from an energy standpoint, but also a ridership perspective. As a driverless shuttle or set of shuttles, transit agencies will need to know how those shuttles will move people, whether they will move enough people to justify the cost, whether they'll be able to create enough demand for that transit service as a smart shuttle to eliminate the need to drive to an endpoint, and whether autonomous shuttles can actually help reduce the need for parking so that cities don't need to maintain parking space anymore in certain areas, but can rather replace it with residential or commercial and retail space, which is much more profitable and lucrative for cities and municipalities down the road. So autonomous smart shuttle modeling is a critical capacity that Rout 2.0 now offers to transit agencies. We've had a great deal of success in using Rout to model over 9 cities across Canada, and we've grown Rout 2.0 to have highly precise ridership prediction analyses incorporated for autonomous low-speed shuttles, also known as connected and autonomous vehicles. So Rout 2.0 has come to have a lot of great capacities integrated into the set of tools that it is offering to our transit agencies, to our utilities, to our partner consulting firms, and to our government partners. It is multidisciplinary. It brings in social sciences, mathematics, engineering, physics, a whole host of thinking processes to make it a holistic solution. Some folks may want to know, well, what are the biggest things coming up in the electrification and zero emissions landscape? Some of the next big things are the things that Rout 2.0 is going to actually help you calculate, conceptualize, and analyze for the purposes of full fleet zero emissions decarbonization. It includes the newest technologies on battery electric buses, from the battery pack to the motor efficiencies to the powertrain integration. It includes the newest technology specifications around chargers, the highest and lowest power levels, the dynamic power transfer that happens when you're charging up at low power versus high power. It includes now the capacity to analyze smart charging controls. Many of you are going to have a lot of buses at your depots. Not all of those buses can charge at the same time. The grid can't necessarily deliver all the electrons or electricity you need at exactly the time that you need it. So smart charging controls and energy storage integration are some of the next big things that you're going to want to understand, and Rout 2.0 is going to help you do it. And of course, critically, Rout 2.0 maps out the supply chain of green hydrogen in the country, helps you understand where that hydrogen is going to come from, what it will cost you, and it maps out the renewable natural gas supply chain across Canada, where you're going to get that RNG supply from, what it's going to cost you. Overall, Rout 2.0 helps you figure out how you're going to decarbonize, how you're going to electrify, how you're going to save money, and how you're going to help save the planet with us. Now it's our pleasure to introduce our team, a great leadership team that is leading a growing team capacity over the next few months. Parvathy, I'm going to turn it to you to introduce some of our top team leads on the research team at CUTRIC today.
My team is led by Mr. Sherwin Pathiari, who is our lead GISO, Geographic Information System Analyst at CUTRIC. He is also the Zero Emission Bus team lead in my team. I also have Dr. Roberto Sardenberg, who is leading our empirical analysis and predictive modeling studies all across the continent in North America. I also have Dr. Anand Maniam Periyarat, who is a ZEB simulation analyst and data scientist in my team. And we do have other researchers who would be joining the team or who are actually working, but these are the lead scientists in the team.
And it's my pleasure to introduce you to several of the additional leads on our team that have taken commercialization leadership in the areas where Rout 2.0 needs to be presented to the wider world. So we have Adi Ramesh, who is our zero emissions bus project manager, leading everything on the battery electric bus side of the commercial equation. We have Soumya Babsar, who's joining us to lead everything on the hydrogen fuel cell bus side as project manager on that file. We have Dr. Mahmoud Nasheli, who is joining us to lead everything on the autonomous smart vehicle side of the equation. And we have, of course, Dr. Abhishek Raj, who is leading all of our 20+ university, industry, academic research projects on zero emissions bus technology and zero emissions transit technologies. Overall, we've got the best team in the country, the best team in North America, the most experienced team, and the team with the most amount of disciplinary and interdisciplinary multidisciplinary skill sets to answer every question you might have about how do we electrify, how do we decarbonize, how do we save money, what capital investments are needed, what unknowns do we need to plan for, and how do we bring our local councils, regional municipalities, and even our provinces along with us based on the return on investment that we can calculate in precise form. Thank you for joining us for this great launch of Rout 2.0 today. We do have a call to action. If you are a transit agency or a utility, reach out to Parvathy to talk to her about zero emissions bus modeling, decarbonization modeling, and predictive analysis. If you have rollout planning needs and you need that end-to-end from start to finish hand-holding process, reach out to Parvathy so we can help you with your rollout planning for a zero emissions future. If you're a consulting firm, reach out to us to partner. We partner all the time on large tenders and requests for proposals that relate to zero emissions bus technologies, where our technology and our tool at Rout 2.0 can help you as a consulting firm deliver on your commitment to your clients. And of course, if you're a government agency, a representative federally, provincially, municipally, or regionally, reach out to us about your climate action plan. Please reach out to myself or Parvathy to talk to us about your needs, because Rout 2.0 is highly customizable. And if you have a need that you think we can help with, I can guarantee to you that we'll be able to deliver you a tool that will help you answer the questions that you have unanswered today. So with that, we're going to turn to a set of questions. We're always accessible. We're always available to help answer your questions, but we've got a number of our partners lined up with us today to answer your questions here and now. Hi, everyone, again, and thank you so much for having joined our Rout launch and our ZEB Consulting Services launch with myself, with Parvathy, with Martin Lapointe, with Sue Connor, and a few of our other stakeholders. Martin, thanks so much for joining us from Quebec City. We appreciate it. And Parvathy's joining us from Hamilton today, and I'm joining everyone from Toronto. So with that, we're going to launch into the question and answer period, because we had a number of questions come through while we were launching the ZEB Consulting Services, and in particular, talking about Rout 2.0 new capabilities. With that, let's start off with the first question that has come in from the audience. And once again, thank you so much to folks who do have questions. There is a Q&A box on the Visible platform, so feel free to paste in your question there, and we'll aim to get through as many of the questions as possible. We appreciate your enthusiasm and engagement so far, and we're going to try and get to every question in the time we have remaining. So the first question that came through from Mei Wang, I believe from Electrify, was, how does Rout account for maintenance costs, and where do these data sets come from? It's a great question, May, and I'll start off by just explaining what the tool can do. And then Martin, I'll turn to you to see if there's additional considerations that from your agency's perspective, would be additional maintenance considerations we can take into account going forward. But in general, over the last 4 years, May, we've learned a lot about maintenance costs associated with battery electric buses, hydrogen fuel cell buses, and now renewable natural gas buses, or rather compressed natural gas buses that are fueled with renewable natural gas. And in those 4 years, we have come to be able, within our consulting services, to model out and predict the maintenance costs of the zero emissions or low carbon technology solution compared to the baseline, which might be diesel or hybrid or compressed natural gas or a combination thereof, depending on the fleet. So right now, some of the core variables that we integrate into maintenance considerations when agencies are asking us to do the maintenance calculation, they include the obvious suspects that most of you will be familiar with in this industry: battery degradation costs at the 7-year, 12-year, or different year intervals, depending on the agency's normal refurbishment protocol and or depending on the warranty conditions that different manufacturers offer. We take into account fuel cell stack degradation, because fuel cell stacks also degrade over time for hydrogen fuel cell buses. Those need to be taken into account. We model motor life cycle. Although in general, electric motors are going to outlast the vehicle itself, we nonetheless do look at motor degradation if there's any consideration or any potential for motor degradation. We also have started looking at new materials, lightweighting design considerations. So far, it's not generally the case that you have a materials issue on hand when you're maintaining your buses that are specific to BEVs or fuel cell buses. But some of the newer battery electric or zero emissions fuel cell buses out there do use lightweight materials. Some of those lightweight materials are new materials. They're not standard steel materials or standard metal materials. And to the extent that lightweighting creates new maintenance considerations for the vehicle itself, those are new variables that we've started to incorporate as evidence starts to come out about what those maintenance costs could be. And then we also integrate software upgrade cost considerations as part of maintenance. So just like your phone upgrades every once in a while and you get an automatic upgrade on your phone and it improves your battery life, zero emissions buses, including fuel cell and battery electric buses, do have a lot of software on board, and there will be software upgrades during the life cycle of those vehicles. It's an open question right now whether those software upgrades are incorporated at the point of sale, whether they're part of the life cycle of the vehicle from the manufacturer, or they're maintenance costs that transit agencies have to predict and carry. So we have started to look at that. And the last key variables that we do look at and can calculate are pantograph failure costs and charging system costs. So, the charging system, whether it's low power or high power, is not perfect. Things can go wrong, things can break, there are robotic arms. So we do have some evidence now empirically that we can bake into the modeling around the cost of the charging system, as well as energy storage degradation. So to the extent that the agency is going to need on-site energy storage, these are big battery packs. Those battery packs do degrade as well. So there are energy storage costs. And lastly, for those agencies going to hydrogen fuel cell, if they are going to be storing hydrogen on site, there are hydrogen fuel storage costs associated with that are part of maintenance overall. Now, our tool, what we do is compare it to your baseline, as I said, diesel or natural gas. And so we take into account engine refurbishments, engine degradation, lubricant costs, as well as petroleum fuel storage costs to the extent that you have them as an agency. So that's how we address maintenance costs over the long term and how we're able to help our agencies understand that. And Martin, I'll turn to you just to see if there's anything you want to add there about some of the upcoming considerations of maintenance to take into account.
I think you've covered most of the point that I had on my list, and it's agreed that we don't know for sure what's going to be the maintenance cost for a complete electrical bus fleet, but we should target to know it as much as possible, precisely, and that's why we are in contact with you at CUTRIC and with all other transit agencies that are accumulating a lot of data on battery electrical bus for our purposes. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Martin. So we do have a second question from Christopher Somia at Jacobs. And the question is this a physical product or a service? So high level put, it's a set of services based on actual products. The products themselves, like Rout, are Python-based algorithmic code that we've built up from scratch mathematically, and then combine from time to time with additional software platforms we need to run economic analysis or maintenance cost analysis or GIS software that we have to integrate with the algorithmic code. So there's a set of software tools that we've developed on the back end, but we offer it as a service. And so what agencies do is they come to us and they say, look, we've got this list of needs. Can you do everything from a literature review of all of the latest technology through to the actual physics and economics modeling, through to the cost comparison, to the mapping and the cluster mapping, the GIS work, through to the final PowerPoint that you deliver to council. So we package it all as a service. There is a goal in the future of providing a user interface that we can offer on a license basis, and that would allow transit agencies like RTC to just plunk in their data and run the analysis on their own. The big challenge we faced in developing that user interface tool for our members is that transit data are not standardized right now. So a lot of the service work my team does, Parvathy does, is the hard work of getting your data and then tweaking your data, changing it, creating meta-level variables so we can actually plunk it into the software code or into the GIS tool or the other tools that we use as part of the overall package. I think that we're well on the pathway of raising the issue of needing to standardize transit data. And if we can get to standardized transit data nationally as Canadians and Americans, then we can get to user interface tools in the future. Parvathy, I'll turn to you to see if there's anything additional you want to add on that point.
Josipa, you covered it all, but I do want to raise the point that in addition to the predictive modeling piece, we also do a whole bunch of empirical analysis as well, which is already part of our tool. So for those zero emission buses out there with data loggers, we do collect the data and we do analyze that data. And that's also part of validating the modeling prowess that CUTRIC has, which we mentioned in the earlier section of this session.
That's great. Thanks so much, Parvathy. Now, I know we've got a lot of questions, so we'll speed up on our end. The third question we got from Amr Shalabi at U of T is, with respect to scheduling effects, can Rout 2.0 include, or does it include a module that optimizes and generates schedules that take into account range limitations and charging requirements? Happily, Amr, the answer is yes. In Rout 1.0, we initially developed a cluster modeling tool using a lot of GIS savvy that let agencies see, like from the physics perspective, where should chargers be located based on the number of buses and vehicles you have crisscrossing in revenue, non-revenue service. And then we ran a scheduling analysis to say, do you actually have the time in your schedule to deliver that power, or in some cases to fuel up? Because I need to articulate that some transit agencies have certain kinds of block designs and vehicle design, like routes, where you actually will run out of hydrogen fuel in the course of the day. And so you may need an additional fueling time. So Rout 1.0 was able to do that. Heading into Rout 2.0, we've gotten a little bit more advanced, and we've learned a lot more in the last year about labor constraints and the fact that most transit agencies schedule based on labor constraints, either internal, say, unionized labor constraints or regulatory employment labor constraints. And so now Rout 2.0 can take into account the labor rules you need to work with to provide a healthy working environment for your drivers, what constraints that causes on your scheduling, and then work with that to figure out how the schedule may need to change and the block runs may need to change to create enough time to charge to get the energy into the vehicles or enough time to fuel. So we're heading into Rout 2.0, a lot more advanced scheduling analysis. And Parvathy, anything you want to add on that point?
No, Josipa, I think you captured it all, other than, the scheduling work that we already do as a part of Rout 1.0. Rout 2.0 is actually enhancing the scheduling optimization ability that the toolset has. And we are bringing in different facets to the tool and enhancing its functionality.
And I'll just say we do work with universities regularly in order to keep adding intellectual property to this tool, since we are a nonprofit. And we have a project with the University of Manitoba right now, a research team there. We're really looking forward to that student graduating with her PhD so we can hire her. And she is leading a project for next generation scheduling optimization. So the next question is, why do we include compressed natural gas and hydrogen fuel cell buses in the studies if they're not considered carbon neutral? And that comes from Mirko Bilanjic at MBM CAD Inc. So interesting question, Mirko. We don't define what is zero emissions and what is not zero emissions. We model any type of low carbon smart mobility public fleet tool. And so within that, there are three large pillars, as we said: battery electric, hydrogen fuel cell, and renewable natural gas vehicles fed into CNG. So we model all of those opportunities. And we've realized that across the country, depending on what your electrical grid looks like, depending where your hydrogen is produced and how it's produced, and depending on where you obtain renewable natural gas supplies, there's no one perfect solution, and all three of these offer emissions reductions to some level, to some extent, in differing ways across this country. And so what we're able to do is tell agencies that if you have a goal of going to zero emissions, this is how many emissions and how many pollutants you can save with battery electrification in your community, with hydrogen fuel cell technology in your community, and with renewable natural gas in your community. It's not a one-size-fits-all solution across all of Canada, because our energy does not come from one supply chain. And Martin, I'll just turn to you to see if there's anything you want to add there about the complexities of going to zero emissions, knowing that battery electric is not the only solution out there for eliminating emissions.
No, it's fine. I think we should consider all the options, and it's what you can offer by exploring all the technological options.
That's great. Thanks so much, Martin. There is a question about, is there a brochure document that highlights all the key features and variables, explaining what the tool is and what the consulting services, what we can do in totality at CUTRIC? Yes, there is. So everybody who's part of this launch will get a recording of the launch, as well as we're going to share with you that brochure that explains to you all the things that we can do as a nonprofit consortium that has been dedicated to helping transit agencies get to a zero emissions future. But we're also very keen to partner. And as we mentioned in our launch, we do work with a lot of our consulting firm partners out there. They're a lot bigger. They have a lot of experience. There's some firms out there that have a lot of experience in areas where we don't play, like architectural design. And so once you do get the brochure, please do take a look and get a hold of myself or Parvathy. We can let you know if there's something you need that we don't do, and then we can pass you on to one of our partners, or we can work with one of our partners to offer that entire turnkey solution to our transit agencies. So going on to the next question, will there be a demo of the product? Happy to say yes. And so additionally, I think a couple folks asked this question actually of, we'd love to see a live demo. And we're super happy to provide live demos of how the tool works and essentially the product that the outputs it provides. There are actually some quasi-live demos you can look at online already. As Parvathy noted, we do present to city councils. By the time we get to city council or regional council, usually we're presenting like a snippet of the outcomes for our political elected officials to understand. A lot of those are recorded, like our presentation at Burlington, our presentation at Riverside, our presentation at London Council. They are recorded, they're part of the public record, and you can actually access them already to see, what do city councilors see when we get to the end of the line. But we also do regular demo workshops with our transit agency members, with our government partners, and we take them through the deep dive. Now, a real modeling activity like London Transit, to take you through the entire tool and everything it produces, it's about a 90-minute demo, and it's a lot of physics and a lot of economics, but I think people generally find it extremely revealing. And so we're very happy to set those up. If you would like a live demo, please get a hold of us and we will set up a deep dive demonstration with you. Parvathy, anything you want to add there?
No, Josipa, the fact is that if anyone is interested in learning more about the tool, please do email me and I will be happy to set up a call with you and take you through the multi-step process that we do in Rout to get you the results that you need. And that the book is, very diverse and very long. It has multiple characteristics to it and it is very customizable. So we can tell you all the details in a one-to-one meeting.
Yeah, and happy to do that because we're data geeks, so we love talking about it. Now, next question, Michael Butler from Parsons has a couple questions. Michael, I'm going to try and address two of yours in one. One question is, do we support agencies in the United States? Yes, we do. We focused on California so far, and we kind of made a joke last year before COVID started that CUTRIC could also stand for California Urban Transit Research and Innovation Consortium. So we had great partners at Riverside, Orange County, Elk Grove, Santa Monica, Big Blue Bus. We were able to do modeling work for all four of those agencies. We learned a lot with them, and we were super excited to be able to support their deployment efforts, largely because, as you know, in the US, especially in California, they're under regulatory pressure to go green. And so you absolutely need to know the answers to these questions. And the baseline is generally natural gas as opposed to diesel in Canada. So it's a very interesting scenario. Happy to partner with any agency in the United States. And of course, a lot of our manufacturing partners have deployment empirical evidence in the US now. And as a result, they're very frequently willing to share their empirical data with us as we do the predictive work so that we can help the transit agency see what empirical versus predictive differentials look like. So please do get a hold of us about American efforts. And we are fully equipped now to work in the United States more broadly from an insurance perspective, among other aspects of business. But your second question was, can we provide analysis of transit agencies that want to go completely off the grid, like using solar power? The answer to that is yes. We actually started doing that 3 years ago. I'll be honest, though, in saying we haven't gotten a lot of requests like this, but over 3.5 years ago, we were doing a project with the Ontario Public Transit Association, and there was an explicit question there about if we installed solar panels at all of our bus stops or streetcar stops and installed solar panels at our facilities, assuming that the roof could hold the weight, et cetera, could enough energy be created and stored to power a certain portion of the fleet? So we actually did preliminary analysis of that question over 3.5 years ago. We've continued to develop the physics around that, so it is possible to do. The area that we don't do right now, and where we'd love to partner with an agency or a consulting firm to work on, is we don't do the analysis of whether the roofs can hold the weight of solar panels or whether you own the real estate to set up the solar panels. But assuming assuming that the solar panels were set up, we can do, right now, Rout 2.0 can do the assessment of, is there sufficient energy at what times in the day? Is there going to be the need for energy storage for variable power? And how much of that power can electrify how much of your fleet? And how much of that power can produce how much hydrogen for hydrogen fuel cell vehicles as well? So hopefully that answers that question. We have time for just the last couple quick answer questions. We have a question about, could Rout 2.0 or the consulting services simulate the costs and emissions to electrify paratransit fleets? The answer is absolutely yes. We've already done that. So there's special paratransit fleets and cutaway fleets and special delivery fleets within transit, some of which I was not aware of until I started working in this industry. Not all transit is 40-foot and 60-foot buses. There's a lot of specialized vehicles in transit. So we are now able to model those vehicles as well. And increasingly, we have more partnerships with manufacturers of those special vehicles, as well as increasingly we have the empirical evidence of what the charging levels are and the power levels. One of the public outputs that we were able to analyze were the directly operated vehicles in Riverside that are not standard 40 and, the contracted vehicles in Riverside Transit that are not 40-footers and 60-footers, they're specialized vehicles. That information is in the public domain, but let us know if you'd like to get a deep dive, a demo of that. Questions about how to reach us. Definitely, we have a LinkedIn page, we have a Twitter page, but we do have our contact information that's going to be sent out in the brochure. And Parvathy is our numero one lead of this great research team. I just think we have brilliant people on our team. I've been really privileged to have the chance to work with really, really smart people who are dedicated, like really dedicated. We've all kind of drunk the Kool-Aid and believe in the climate action plan over here. So we've got dedicated people with a lot of smarts and interdisciplinarity. You'll be given the information in the email we send out about how to contact Parvathy and our research team, talk about partnerships. We can share with you the deep dive demos, or we can talk to you about your transit agency needs. I should reiterate as well that as a nonprofit, with a lot of our members being transit agencies and public utilities and academics, in our contact with you, we will also talk about funding options. So you might need this work, but you might not have the money to do this work. As a nonprofit, we have the ability to work with FCM and Federation of Canadian Municipalities. We have the ability to work with the Atmospheric Fund. We have the ability to go after government grants with you and in partnership with you to help support your funding needs to actually be able to do this work. So there's a lot of opportunities there, and we can share with you how that can be achieved. Lastly, we have a question about, are these services available to private fleets? Yes, they are. Parvathy is currently leading a project with a private sector partner. We won't talk too much about that because it is under non-disclosure right now, but it is a private sector partner that has a fleet of products and services, and she is doing the full fleet analysis of that potentiality and that supply chain. So we have seen more and more private fleets raise their hand and say that they're quite keen on this. I should also note that a number of transit agencies have recently come to us and asked if we can do light duty vehicles. So a number of transit agencies, you do have light duty cars in your transit fleet, and that is something that you need modeled out as well. So with that, what I'm going to do is in the last minute, turn Martin to yourself to identify any additional points you'd like to raise. And we'd like you to raise about the importance of modeling feasibility analysis, cost comparisons for any agency thinking of going electric, if it's still thinking that it may not need to do that kind of feasibility work.
From our side, it's clear from the beginning that we should simulate and have a view, a big picture overview of our plan. So that's why it was part of our plan from the beginning.
Thank you so much, Martin. I appreciate it. And Parvathy, I really appreciate your support here too. And to our colleagues at Burlington Transit and all the other agencies that we've worked with, the 30-some agencies that we've modeled, we're really excited to continue work with you. We appreciate your time on the line and all the questions you've posed. There's a few we didn't get to, but please feel free to connect with us so that we can help you answer those queries if we didn't get them to today. To remind you, everybody will get a replay of the launch today with the PDF summary of Rout 2.0 and all of the ZEB Consulting Services capacities, variables, and capabilities. With that, I want to thank you all, wish you all a great day, and I wish you truly to stay safe and secure during this testy time that we have. Hopefully, we'll all come out of it with a return to transit that's bolder and brighter for the economy and the environment ahead. Thank you so much.